here are some skateboarding facts that you probably didn't know. So skateboarding is pretty cool, but you know what's even cooler? Learning. So come on this journey through space and time as we dig up some skate facts that you might not know. While it's commonly known that skateboarding really started around the 50s by surfers in California who were looking for a way to shred when there were no waves, there were actually primitive skateboards that were being used about a decade earlier. Back before there was these, or even these, all people had were roller skates, fruit crates, and wood. And these were all mashed together into what were known as crate scooters. So kids had a fun enough time with these until a few brilliant masterminds decided to rip the fruit crates off and just stick with the wood and roller skate wheels. And thus, the skateboard as we know it was born. So yeah, I guess you can say skateboarding technically came from scooters. There were reports of these early skateboards in France in the 1940s, but it wasn't until you put these boards in the hands of some surfers that skateboarding as we know it really started to take shape. Growing up, I had always heard that Vans was the maker of the first skateboard shoe. We've all probably seen their merchandise, proudly touting the fact that they were established in 1966, and given the time when skateboarding really started to take off, it makes sense to assume that they were the first. However, there was actually a shoe that came out a year earlier, which holds the honor of being the first shoe made for skateboarding specifically. The Randolph Rubber Company came out with a shoe called the Randy 720. These shoes had thick rubber soles and provided plenty of traction, as boards at the time typically didn't have any grip tape. Obviously, the fact that we skate Vans instead of Randys shows that this company didn't last, but it's still a pretty interesting bit of skateboarding history. Something that has always had a dubious origin story is where the term goofy comes from to describe a skateboarder who rides with their right foot forward. I've been asked many times if being goofy is bad, and given the name, I can see why a beginner might see it as a negative thing. Now, of course, this term was carried over to skateboarding from the surfing world, but where did the surfers get it from? While this origin is debated, it's the one with the most amount of citation and seems like it makes enough sense. In 1937, Disney released an animation called Hawaiian Holiday. In it, Goofy tries surfing several times, and at one point he's riding with his right foot forward, and from there people associated the two together. Once surfers started using the term, we only had to wait 20 years until skateboarding grew, and then the name naturally transferred over. In the late 1990s, the US Marine Corps held an operation called Urban Warrior 99. This operation's purpose was to look into different tools that Marines could utilize in an urban environment. And I'm sure you can already see where this is going. Skateboards were chosen and tested to help with maneuvering in buildings to detect tripwires and sniper fire. Now, I'm not actually sure if they made custom military-grade skateboards, but the caption for this picture names it as an experimental combat skateboard. I think it's safe to say that the fact that we don't see armed forces riding skateboards into combat means that they scrapped this idea and moved on to other things. Between 1978 and 1989, skateboarding was nearly entirely outlawed in all of Norway. Not only was the act of skating prohibited, but also owning, selling, and advertising skateboards was forbidden. The reason for this ban was undereducated people in government thinking that skateboarding was too dangerous. Norway's Environment Ministry said that protecting children is more important than letting big business make money. During the ban, ever-tenacious skateboarders had to resort to smuggling in skateboards from other countries like Germany. There was one legal place in the country to skate at this time, however. FROGNERPARKEN in Oslo was the only government-sanctioned place where you could skate legally, but clearly it wasn't feasible for those who didn't live in Oslo to travel there just to skate. Thankfully, the ban was eventually repealed in 1989, and the country saw a surge in skateboarders and skate parks across the country. And now they have a thriving skate scene to this day. There are actually 2 skate parks in the world that are recognized as historic sites. The Bro Bowl, which was built in the 70s in Tampa, Florida, was placed on the U.S. National Register of Historic Places in 2013. For comparison's sake, this is the same list that the Statue of Liberty is on. Unfortunately, despite its status, the old skate park was demolished and rebuilt. The other historic skate park is the Rom Skate Park in East London. This park was built in 1978 and has been given a protected status from the government for being nationally important and of special interest. These old parks are pretty basic by today's standards, but it must feel pretty cool to skate a piece of history. Speaking of old skate parks, the very first skate park to ever exist was Surf City in Tucson, Arizona. The park was built on September 3rd, 1965, and holds the honor of being the skate park that started it all. While skate parks have evolved a ton over the decades, just having a designated area to skate in the 60s, regardless of the obstacles, must have been pretty amazing. This one was a bit hard to find information and images of, but from what I can tell, this one no longer exists. Regardless, we all owe a little bit of thanks for the place that kicked off the skate park boom in America. With all of the awful slams we see daily with things like Hall of Meat, it would be easy to think that skateboarding is a pretty dangerous thing. And don't get me wrong, I'm not telling you that skating is completely safe and you'll never get hurt, but studies by the US National Library of Medicine have concluded that despite its negative image among the medical fraternity, the skateboard does not appear to be a dangerous sport, with a low incidence and injuries encountered being not severe. Now, they do go on to say that skating should be restricted to supervised parks and skaters should wear protective gear. However, comparing the annual death and injuries from skateboarding to other popular sports continually lists skating as less dangerous than football, hockey, basketball, hiking, riding a horse, and so on. Once again, like I always say, never skate outside of your bounds, and if you don't feel confident and safe, then definitely wear a helmet. But it is interesting to know that established medical experts recognize the relative safety of skateboarding over other sports. So those were some interesting facts about skateboarding that maybe you did or didn't know. Either way, hopefully you learned something. I always think it's fun to learn new things about something that I love. And also keep in mind that it's possible I messed something up in this list, so if you have any corrections, then just let me know down below. But besides that, I'd like to thank my Patreon pledgers for being too cool for school. And as always, I'd like to thank you for watching, and you can like and subscribe if you want.